You're on Rescue TV. I'm delighted to welcome back our old friend, Dr. John Demartini, human behaviour specialist and the author of The Values Factor. Today we're going to talk about guilt-free parenting. Guilt-free everything is your speciality, isn't it?
Well, I'm very fascinated by how people hold on to things of the past and judge themselves and hold them back from doing something extraordinary with their life. And judging yourself and feeling guilty and shame about things is not really the most productive thing. It's wiser to find out how whatever you've done, how it served you and how it served others, instead of holding on to the past.
I'm going to ask you, Dr. Demartini, why is it that we're so hung up on judging ourselves? It's not like there are nanny cams observing our own behaviour in our homes or in our offices, but people seem to get so hung up on what other people think of them.
Well, as long as we minimize ourselves to other people and inject their values into our life and expect ourselves to live in other people's values, we're going to beat ourselves up thinking we're supposed to be like them. Envy is ignorance, imitation is suicide. Wisdom is knowing how to be true to yourself. You don't judge yourself relative to your own values. You judge yourself when you've injected somebody else's values into you. Freud called it the superego. We inject the values of authority figures into our life and then expect to live in those values, those ideals, and then beat ourselves up and think, oh my God, I should be doing this, I ought to be doing this, I'm supposed to be doing this, and then feel bad about ourselves because we're expecting ourselves to be somebody other than who we are.
So who are we trying to be when we're having that parental guilt? And how can we set aside that desire to be somebody else, the perfect version of ourselves?
Well, as long as sometimes we have people that we think, oh, by God, they've got a better life. You know, if
that celebrity star,
the celebrity or the person that's possibly done some sort of a video or a book or something, that we go, oh, I should be like that.
Right.
And then we compare ourselves to that instead of honor who we are. No two people are the same, and there's no, this is the way it's supposed to be. There's a flexibility in life, and we need everybody and everybody's views and everybody's way of doing it. If you look very carefully at the way people have been raised, you'll find that some great people have come from the most outrageous beginnings. And so as a mother, you don't want to sit there and put yourself into a storybook and think, oh, I should be this, and if I'm not, there's something wrong with me. You want to just honor who you are and know that, do you love your child? If you do, you're showing love to your child in your own form. That's a gift. And don't compare it to how it's supposed to be according to somebody else.
Do you think, you are a human behaviour specialist, and you've been doing this for a very long time. Has the conversation around parental guilt changed or intensified in the past decade? Or is it the same conversation women have been having for, decades?
I think that's pretty consistent through the ages. But today, because we have access to social media and the world, we can see ourselves comparing ourselves to more people, and we there's more of a comparison between we see celebrity life and super lives, or our friends' lives, and we beat ourselves up. And all I can say is that, if you made a list of all the most famous people in the world, some of them came from the most outrageous beginnings.
So Angelina Jolie, with all her children,
yes,
she had kind of a different background.
I had a young boy who was angry at his mom because, she didn't raise him properly. Mm-hmm. And he was comparing her to some idealism. When I asked him, what would be the drawback if she had done that? What would be the drawback to you if she had done what you thought she should have done?
Right.
And he couldn't think of any. I said, well, that's a fantasy. And if you compare your reality to a fantasy, you'll never appreciate your mom. I said, what would have been the drawback? And we started listing the drawbacks of the way he thought it should have been.
Right.
And then we started listing the benefits of the way it was. And he eventually broke down in tears of gratitude for his mom because he was thinking that she had messed up. And the truth, she hadn't. She was just trying to juggle her job, her work, her wanting to have a man in her life because she was single with a child. And putting all those things together, when he saw that, he realized that she did an extraordinary job. And he was comparing to a fantasy. And when he actually broke the fantasy, he appreciated the person. I always say when we're depressed and we're not appreciating other people or ourselves, it's because we're comparing ourselves or them to people we think they're supposed to be. And they're who they are, not who we think they're supposed to be.
So as a parent, are there a couple of simple techniques that can stop us in our tracks when we're going into that spiral of feeling guilty? Are there some quick things to snap out of it, so to speak?
I would write down everything you feel that you've made a mistake on, anything you feel shame or guilt about, and write them all down. Mm-hmm. Inventory them. And then ask
You're big on inventories, aren't
well,
you?
because if not, it just runs around in your head, and I'd rather have a short pencil than a long memory. And so what happens is you put it down, and you make a list of everything that's on your mind that's occupying space and time in your mind that's really bothering you, feel shame and guilt about. And then what you do is you go in there and write down, how did it serve whoever's involved? And how did it serve you? Whatever you did. And if you go in there and find out how it served you and served the people involved, as you identify the benefits to them, your shame and guilt goes down. Because shame and guilt is an assumption that you have done something with your actions that have caused more pain than pleasure, or more loss than gain, or more negative than positive to somebody. When you find out the benefits, the gains, and the positives to those people, it just calms down. And then you realize that you had chosen to see only one half of the equation and not see both sides.
So it's not self-justification, it's just reframing it.
It's looking for the other side. We've all had events in our life that we thought were terrible. And then a day, a week, a month, a year, 5 years later, we look back at it and go, you know what? Thank God that occurred. I didn't see it. So instead of having the wisdom of the ages with the aging process, it's wise to have the wisdom of the ages without it, not have to have the aging process. So by asking that question, how did it serve people, we will discover that over time, but why wait? And why age in the process? Why not just find it now? So the quality of your life is based on the questions you ask. And if you ask how specifically is what I've done, how has it served? Don't make anything up. Don't exaggerate it. Just look. And once you see it and balance it, the shame and guilt is gone and you're back into being present. Because you made the decision at that moment based on what you believed would be the greatest advantage over disadvantage at the moment. But the only way you could judge it is by comparing it to what you think it should have been based on some outside authority.
That's true.
And once you realize that the outside authority is just another person with a different set of values, you're not necessarily supposed to live in other people's values. You're here to live in your own.
Well, I think those are fantastic tips for any area where you feel guilt or you feel a little bit stretched. And as always, I want to thank you so much for being so clear with your wonderful advice. Thanks, Dr. DiMartini.
Thank you. Appreciate it.